the whole time I thought it would be me in the behind the scenes and my father promoting the message, my father being on stage, my father being the one that was traveling and spreading the work that I was going to do along his side. And then 2015 comes and I'm on his deathbed, and suddenly that dream was dying. It wasn't just that my father was dying, but the dream was dying. And I could not bear the thought that the work would die. I couldn't bear the thought that I wasn't going to be exposed to that world anymore, that outlet, that escape, that side part of my life, that passion that I had so deeply was going to disappear when my dad was gone. And I remember sitting there with him and saying, like, Dad, like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm not just losing you. I'm losing an entire world, like this world that you made me a part of. And I don't know how to live without it. And my dad looked at me and he said, "Oh, mi amor, you don't have to worry about that world. It's going to find you." Hey, listener, welcome to episode number 106 of Listen Up. So today is a very special day. It is a day we celebrate Mother's Day. And because it is Mother's Day, it has me thinking about my motherhood journey and how motherhood has been, for me, the catalyst for reimagining my life, and also the comfort zone for me hiding in my life. I think that things in this life can be both and motherhood has certainly been that for me, and maybe has also been that for you. So I'm going to share my story, and what I want you to think about is what sacred role in your life has led you in a direction and has been the impetus for you going in a direction, and then slowly becomes the thing that keeps you stuck in a certain direction or prevents you from moving toward a different direction. That is an important thing to notice, because life is not linear, and what works for you today may not work for you tomorrow. So it is important to continue to notice and figure out where you are falling out of alignment, drifting from the highest version of yourself, and when your life is calling you to readjust. And I've experienced that a few times thanks to motherhood. So I want to start with the belief that built the foundation of my path in my life. So I grew up with a dad who was a motivational speaker and spent most of his career traveling around the world. He was divorced from my mom. And even though we had this beautiful relationship, I really grew up with my mom being the steady, stable force that led me in my life, and that made sure that I brushed my teeth and put me to bed every night, and kind of held the fort while my father pursued his career and lived his best life. Ever since I was 7 years old, my father started bringing me into his world of personal development, and I absolutely loved that world. And in college, or after college, between college and law school, I actually took a gap year to travel with my father and manage his speaking career and see what his life was like. And even though I loved every minute of it, I had a deep longing to have a family. I wanted a family in the traditional sense. I wanted to have a husband and kids and kind of build something like that. So from very early on, I had this belief that in order for me to establish that, because I was a woman, that I could not be both the mother who was at home, like my mother, raising the kids, and the woman pursuing the life that my father pursued, like the motivational speaker life, being on a plane all the time. And quite frankly, I didn't want it at the time. I wanted motherhood more. So motherhood shaped my career even before I became a mother. And it is the impetus for me to have gone to law school and become a lawyer, because I wanted to be a professional and I wanted to be a career woman, but I wanted to do it in a way that supported being home with my family. So that's how it started. Then I had my first detour, my first shift in thinking. So I had grown up with this plan and I followed the plan and I checked all the boxes and I followed all the rules and I became a public defender. And while I was a public defender, I got married, I got pregnant with my first child, and I assumed that because I had chosen this career, that when I had my baby, life would continue the way that I had planned it. I would take my maternity leave, have my child, hire a nanny, and then go back to work. It never even occurred to me that I would want anything different. But the moment that I held that child in my arms, something inside of me knew that I was never going back to the public defender's office. I took an extended maternity leave and eventually realized that I wasn't going to go back to a 9 to 5. I didn't want to spend such an extraordinary time away from the home, especially with travel time. You know, it's an hour to the PD's office, an hour back from where I lived. It was just going to be too time consuming, and I wanted to savor being a mom. I really wanted the stay at home mom life. So what's interesting about that is that this lifestyle that I purposely chose so that I could be a mom was no longer serving me when I actually became a mom. That wasn't the only lifestyle that didn't work for me. So once again, I was at a crossroads and I made the decision not to go back. So then that required me to take a big detour. And I resigned from my job and decided I was going to stay home. And then one day I got a call from one of my best friends who I went to law school with. And he invited me to come to his practice because he needed some help and he needed support. He had just gone out on his own. So I did. I followed the call just out of curiosity because a little part of me did want to go back to work. But when I went to visit him, I quickly realized that he didn't need an associate law partner or an associate lawyer. What he needed was a bookkeeper. Now, I had an accounting degree from Florida State, and I just agreed to start doing this guy's accounting. I just thought it would be a great bridge to allow me to do some work and make a little extra money and support my friend while also choosing being home as the priority. One thing led to the other, and before I knew it, I actually had my first company, which was called Esquire Accounting at the time. And I did bookkeeping for lots of lawyers. I actually created a little business by doing that. And it allowed me to be home with my kids and then do QuickBooks online from home. And it was my first shot at entrepreneurship. And I have to say, it was a really great move on my part because even though leaving the public defender's office and going to a one income family was a financial sacrifice for our family, I ended up making more as a bookkeeper than I did as a public defender. But even though it was going well, a lot of people questioned that decision. They would ask me things like, well, why did you bother going to law school if you weren't going to practice law? Or isn't it like a downgrade to go from being a lawyer to being a bookkeeper? They would say, you know, it's a shame that you have all this student debt and you're not even practicing the profession that got you into that debt. So I got a lot of shade for that decision. And I ended up coming up with a line, and this is what I would tell people. I would say, I went to law school to have the choice to practice law. And that also means that I have the choice not to practice law. And I honored that decision and I enjoyed it. And I actually really loved that time. And eventually, life led me back to practicing law. There were some opportunities that came my way from the bookkeeping, interestingly enough. And I picked up a condo law practice and developed it, and eventually partnered up with my best friend, and we ran this condo law practice for several years and did very, very well for ourselves doing that. So I had to close down the bookkeeping job because law, I resumed my lawyer role at some point. But the zigzag and the entire experience had one predominant theme. And that was that I was choosing motherhood first. Yes, I went back to work, and yes, I eventually picked up the pace a little bit, but it was always on my terms. I was always able to choose being with my kids. I was always able to be at all of the school events. My career really was like the back seat, and being a mom came first. In fact, I have a really funny story that one day we went to dinner. My husband and I went to dinner with one of my husband's clients and his family. And the daughter of his client wanted to go to law school. So we're sitting across from each other, and the mom starts asking me questions and asks me to advise her daughter. And I do. And then my son looks at me at some point and says, "Mommy, why are they asking you questions? Isn't daddy the real lawyer?" Now, you'd think that I would find that offensive, but I didn't, because what it was at that moment was me realizing that my son saw me as a mom only, like as a mom first and foremost. And that is the role that I longed for. So I actually was happy that he didn't really know that I was a real lawyer. So throughout that time, I was very happy with the choice I had made. I was on path. I felt very confident about the decisions and about the career and motherhood season I was in, and I was truly enjoying it. But in 2015, another crossroads came upon my path, and that's because my father died. Now, when my father died, I remember sitting at his deathbed, and shortly before he passed, a couple years prior, him and I had started dreaming together about writing a book about our relationship. My husband had planted a seed in me on this concept of him and I, how he had always been there for me, even when he wasn't. And he had this idea that I should start this speaking, write this book about being there even when you're not. And my father bought into the idea, and we had started working on it. So a couple years before 2015, I had already started getting that itch, that bug of maybe a little part of me did want to do the personal development work, did want to be in the inspiration space, did want to write the book. But the whole time I thought it would be me in the behind the scenes, and my father promoting the message, my father being on stage, my father being the one that was traveling and spreading the work that I was going to do along his side. And then 2015 comes, and I'm on his deathbed, and suddenly that dream was dying. It wasn't just that my father was dying, but the dream was dying. And I could not bear the thought that the work would die. I couldn't bear the thought that I wasn't going to be exposed to that world anymore, that outlet, that escape, that side part of my life, that passion that I had so deeply was going to disappear when my dad was gone. And I remember sitting there with him and saying like, Dad, like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm not just losing you. I'm losing an entire world, like this world that you made me a part of. And I don't know how to live without it. And my dad looked at me and he said, oh, mi amor, you don't have to worry about that world. It's going to find you. So he passed away, and I'm not a person who has had many regrets in my life. I don't really live with a lot of regrets, and I've always lived a pretty good path, but I had a sense of regret in that moment. The regret that I never pursued that work with him, the regret that maybe I could have shared the stage with him. Maybe I could have written the book sooner. Maybe if I hadn't wasted so much time, I could have done it. So I committed in that moment that I was going to carry his legacy. I was going to do this work. This was going to be my life work. And at first, I thought I was going to do it the same way I had always done it, on the side, right? I was going to be a lawyer, but I was going to write the book on the side and just do it that way. But as time passed, I realized being a mom was such a priority. And then I was training for a marathon, which was a priority. And then I wanted to write this book that was a priority. And I was a lawyer, which was a priority. I had too many conflicting priorities and I couldn't make everything fit. Something had to go. And the only thing that I was willing to let go was my legal career, because I was at a point where I could no longer let go of the personal development work. So I made the difficult decision to walk away from my very good established law firm that I had created. It took me several years to dismantle it. I ended up selling it to my partner, leaving him with a condo practice, doing some consulting on the side. It took a while for me to fully transition. And then I did. But when I did, I was stuck in the belief that that was the foundation from the very beginning. You can't do both. You can't be the mom who's raising these kids and have your dad's life. I didn't want his life. I wanted his career. I didn't want his life. I wanted the work, not the lifestyle. And then I didn't know what to do. So I suffered from paralysis by analysis. I was stuck for so long. I moved at a turtle's pace. I did a speech here and there at local places. I posted on Instagram. I worked on my book. Eventually, I actually wrote the book and finished the book, but I wasn't making any money. We were back to being a single income family because I wasn't making the money anymore. And I was just letting the days go by. Every day waking up and trying to do this work, but not really doing anything. But thinking that I was doing it, I was stuck in thinking energy for a long time. That's why when I talk to you about thinking energy and I talk to you about the difference between trying and doing, I talk to you from a place of knowing, because I have been where you are. I know what it's like to suffer from paralysis by analysis. I know what it's like to feel that imposter syndrome, to feel like you're not really sure how to build this thing because maybe there is no blueprint for you. My father's blueprint didn't work for me, so I didn't know what else to do. And then I had a pneumonia that almost killed me. In 2019, I was hospitalized, put in ICU. I was there for about a week. I almost died from a really bad pneumonia. And I had just written the book. So I just felt like I had gotten a little momentum because I had written the book, and then the pneumonia wiped me out. And during that time, it was like a come to Jesus moment for me. And I realized that I needed some clarity and I needed some direction and I needed some answers. And I remember calling my dear friend, Nikki Novo. and asking her if she'd be willing to do a reading for me. She does these spiritual readings, and I was I was desperate for some answers, and I was like, maybe she'll give me some clarity. So Nikki and I jump on the phone to do a reading, and I don't know what to expect from this experience, but she starts talking and telling me things. And then all of a sudden, she says to me, I'm getting a sense that your spirit guides are very frustrated with you because you are using your kids as an excuse to stay stuck, to stay in your comfort zone. Now, I did not receive that well. I was like, excuse me? I did not feel that I was using my kids as an excuse to stay stuck. I felt like I had deep clarity about the mother that I wanted to be and the life that I wanted to have. And that was what was keeping me stuck. Not that my kids were an excuse. I wouldn't have had it any other way. I was proud of every choice I had made. I was proud that I was home with my kids. I was proud that they were my priority. I wasn't going to, let her tell me that they were my excuse. But as I sat and I reflected on it, I realized she was right. Because what had happened was during that time, my kids had grown quite a bit. They were in school for most of the day. And I had started to fill my time with mom activities, like being the treasurer of the PTO, volunteer work, just a lot of extracurricular things that weren't really me being with my kids or even enjoying my kids, but rather wearing the mom costume, like wearing the mom hat instead of pursuing the work that I was being called to pursue. You see, the choices I had made had served me and allowed me to be home with my kids when they really needed me, but the season had shifted. What was required of me was not the same. And I had drifted from the version of myself I wanted to become because I didn't quite notice. I didn't have the awareness. I wasn't living a lifestyle of reflection at the time that could keep me realigning and getting in check. So she was right. It wasn't that my kids weren't going to be a priority anymore, but the time had come where I could dedicate a lot more energy and time into the work that I was doing, that I wanted to do. And that's when I made the decision. I quit the volunteer roles. I made space. I started to allow that version of me to come forward. And then synchronicity played its role. I told the universe, yes, I want this. And the universe said, okay. And it gave us COVID, which changed everything. But COVID actually opened the door for my coaching business, which I did not realize I was heading down that path until I was there. And because I had made space, because I had the clarity, because I was no longer going to use my kids as an excuse, I was able to see a different path that actually allowed me to pursue the work while still being home with my kids. I didn't need to travel. I didn't need to be away. I didn't need to live out of a suitcase. I got to do both. The personal development work that I loved, answer my calling, take my work seriously, and be with my family. What I have learned is that the thing that leads you forward sometimes is the thing that holds you in place unless you're paying attention. I saw that again with my son. The calling that led my son in one direction ended up becoming a little bit of a prison for him. It's the thing that kept him stuck. And he had to detour. He had to move a different direction. I talk about that in the episode, Getting Off the Bus. The same thing happened to me with motherhood. Motherhood led me to entrepreneurship. It led me to reimagine my life. But then it became my excuse. It became my comfort zone. It became the thing that I used to keep me from doing the things, executing on my life, on this business. This is what drift looks like for us. It's not laziness. It's not lack of productivity. It's not failure. It's loving a chapter so much that you don't get the memo when the season has changed. It's not knowing how to name the season and nurture your intentions properly. It's allowing life and its circumstances to take over and help you do things you love, but maybe lose sight of the intentions that you had to begin with. Maybe lose sight of the dreams that you had, because sometimes distractions are very tempting and they take over our dreams. Right now, this is the beginning of another shift in my life. Next year, my oldest son will be a senior in high school, and I'm starting to see the tide shifting. I'm starting to enter the season of older teenagers, of being a bird launcher, like my friend Luli B would say, of taking a different role in motherhood once again. And that's going to require me to reimagine my life all over again. Because that's the thing. Every time that you get comfortable and in a flow, a new season pops up. That's the cycle of life. It is both exciting and sometimes unnerving. But we learn from those lessons. And I now have tools that I didn't have before. So now I can foresee the season changing. I can name it. And I can open myself to the imagination and the curiosity of what's going to wait for me on the other side, so that I don't get stuck in holding on to something that no longer serves me. So here's what I want to ask you today. What season are you actually in? Not the one that you're used to, not the one that feels safe, but the season that your life is actually asking you to step into. Is it time for you to start reimagining your life, your roles, your career, your day-to-day? Or maybe you know someone who is experiencing this right now. So if you do, would you do me the favor of sending this episode to her? Maybe she needs to listen to this. And if this episode landed deeply in your heart, you're ready to do this kind of work, you're ready to name your season, you're ready to dig deeper, you're ready to live with intention, this is the work that we do in my Well container. The Well is a year-long program where you get to claim your year of intention. And with the simple formula of noticing, naming, and nurturing, you find your way back into realignment. You find your way back towards your dreams. You refuse to drift. So today, if you are a mother and you are listening to this, whether you have littles at home and you're in the thick of it, or you are preparing to launch your little birds off to college, or the college kids are coming back home, or you are now stepping into grandma season. No matter where you are in your life, if you are a mother or have a mother role, I want to wish you a happy Mother's Day. If you have a mother that you want to celebrate today and remember whether she's here with you or she's not, I want to wish her a happy Mother's Day. And if you had a complicated relationship with your mother, but you have the wherewithal to realize that it is because of her that you are in this world, today's a day to reflect on that as well, to give thanks for the channel that brought you here, no matter how complicated the relationship is. I hope this episode has served you. I hope that you realize you are always in training for something bigger and that you start to connect the dots of how every domino falls into the next one. And how, when you look back, all the magic, the synchronicities, and the little life moments start to make sense. I just want you to remember that you are always in training for something bigger, even if you are already living something beautiful. I hope you have a beautiful Sacred Sunday, and I will see you next week. That's it for today's episode. Thanks so much for being here. I am deeply, deeply grateful to connect. If you're loving this podcast, I'd love if you'd follow, rate, or leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Those reviews help us so, so much. And if you know of someone who could really use a voice like mine in their head, please share this episode with them. Now, if you're feeling called to keep the conversation going, come join us inside the Bliss and Up community on Facebook. It is a free space to reflect and root into intention together. You can find the link in the show notes or just search Bliss and Up with Caroline de Posada on Facebook. I'd love to welcome you in. Until next time, take care and keep noticing the sparks of bliss in your life.